So here's the situation. You plant a nice tree in the fall like you're supposed to do. And then you end up with a really harsh winter with really cold snaps, some warm snaps and cold snaps, and it just isn't great for the tree. And then you have this in the spring when things emerge where you have the top dying back and then growth happening at the base. Well, this is very common for crepe myrtles, and this is a crepe myrtle tree that I planted in the fall. I did a video on that back when I planted it. It's a Tuscarora Crape Myrtle, and it's very common that this will happen, but you can fix it very easily. And in fact, a lot of times it's an opportunity for you to actually correct the plant's growth pattern and to get it started growing correctly. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to go through and show you what I'm going to do to get this thing fixed back up into shape. Plus, I'm going to take some cuttings of the leftover parts and get them treated so maybe I can make some more Tuscarora crepe myrtles. I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So as you can see, the top has died back completely. This is all dead growth here. And what I was trying to do was to get about 3 to 5 main stems at the top of the tree to grow into a tree-form crepe myrtle. But what has happened is that the ones that I selected to grow decided that they weren't needed anymore and they died back. But we've got a ton of really great looking green growth coming from the base of the plant. So we're going to correct all this. The first step is to come in and cut out all the dead material. And then we're going to go in here to the base area and we're going to pick 3 to 5 really strong looking suckers, because we're trying to grow this into a tree form crepe myrtle. We really want to have it looking odd. Okay, that sounds a little funny, but odd. 3, 5, 7. Those numbers make the plant look a lot more natural. So if you're picking 4, it looks a lot more planned out. If you do 3 or 5, it looks a little bit more like Mother Nature did its own thing. So that's what we're shooting for in this. And we're going to go through and we're going to actually collect some of these extra suckers that we don't need, and I'll store them in a glass of water until I can get them put into a rooting medium. So let's go through all that kind of stuff together. Okay, so the first step is to come down here and go as far as we can down until we see live growth on each of these dead branches. And so right here on the front piece, I see some live growth right here, and it stops about right where my finger is, a little bit below that. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a nice slanted cut on that section there and get rid of our dead growth. And we'll do that for each of these dead growth areas. They are not going to emerge with any kind of foliage, so there's no point in keeping them around. And I'll remove that. Cut this one all the way back to here. Whenever you are pruning, it is always okay at any time of year to remove dead material. It's just not going to do anything. A lot of times you hear people say things about only prune back 1/3 of a plant, but if it's dead, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't really count to that. So there we go. All right, so that gets rid of our top growth. There's one more, couple little pieces in here, which we probably don't need. And now we're left with a bunch of live growth here that we are going to select from. The first thing to note is we want to have this kind of going in a vase shape. We don't want to have it all crisscrossing. So if we have branches that are going like this, you want to make sure that you're not picking those to keep. You'll want to take them out. So we're going to find a couple of really strong branches on here. I like this one in the front, and I want probably this one here on the side. So there's 2. And then this one is actually coming off of this trunk right here. And I think I may keep that one because I like the direction it's going in. I've got one kind of going in one direction toward the front, one to the side, and one to the back, which gives me that nice vase shape right there. I could potentially go for one of these here on the side, and that puts 1 in the front and then 2 on the sides. So there's a couple of options that we could go with. I like this branch right here in the back. Looks like a really nice strong one. So let me clip out some of the excess first. We'll just kind of whittle it down a little bit, get rid of some of the things we know we're not going to keep, and then we'll pick and choose between a couple of these. All right, so you can see what we're looking at right here. You can see that some of the dead growth where it stopped right there had some live growth coming off the edge. we're not going to keep that one. I'm going to keep this one here for sure. So I'm going to cut this particular piece of woody stem back a little farther down so we can remove that piece. And what comes off of that is actually pretty good for a cutting. So I'm going to remove that right here. We're not going to use the old material. But I've got this piece right here for cutting, and I'll put all the little cutting material that I get off of this plant and put it into that jar of water to take care of later. I'll go ahead and I'll strip off the leaves from that one so that it's just the leaves that are going to be in that jar of water. So here you go, there's a look at that. And I'm going to keep this jar of water a little bit in a shady spot. There's a plant over here beside me, some daylilies, that I can kind of keep it out of the direct sun. This one doesn't look like it's one we want because it's going crosswise through the plant, that direction, and that would be bad for our future pruning needs. So we'll clip that off, but again, we can use that for some cutting material. And I'll probably trim this up a little bit later. So I'm going to cut back this branch here that was on, and we've got some nice branches on that side. This one I don't want. We're just going to trim up around the base a bit and collect good cutting material as we go. All right, this one, you can't see it. Now you can. It's got a little weird growth kind of at the bottom. I don't think that's anything strange. It just kind of looks a little funny. And we probably don't want that as a main branch, just the way it was positioned. But I'll trim off that bottom part and save it. All right, so on this one here, I'm going to trim this piece off because I know I don't need that. But this one here and this one are two that I was considering saving. This one's got a really nice long set of growth going on right now. This one's coming off the old growth on the stem, and there's a couple other branches off that stem. So let's go ahead and clear out those things like this. All right, and taking a look, kind of like that branch here, this one. It's a lot of really nice looking foliage on the plant. We just can't keep it all. But it should make reasonable cutting material. All right, so if I take, I think I'm going to keep this one and remove this one, even though it's a really nice strong piece. This has got that hardwood stem coming off the base, which should be good for direction reasons. It's going to keep it more upright. This one feels like it's going to be pushing down a little bit, going a little more toward the house. So I will go ahead and we'll make that decision. And this is a pretty long piece, so as far as cuttings go, I'm going to split it up a little bit. I'll probably divide it up even further later, but we can definitely get a few good cuttings off of that one branch. And then this one is going across the plant, so we don't need it. These smaller pieces here, I'm going to trim down on the stem a bit, like that. See, we cut that there. And these stems will eventually die back. All right, so it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9, 10 maybe branches still left on here to trim up. And we're going to get rid of this one here. Now, a lot of times when you have really new foliage, you're going to want to cut it back a little bit from there, because that stuff tends to be a little bit more sensitive to taking cuttings from. All right, so I've got this one. I'm going to take this one out, and I'm going to take this one out. So here I've got 5 remaining that are big. Well, there's a couple little ones still in there. So let's see, this one needs to go. And there's a little one here. Take that out. Now, it's okay if you were to just leave 4 or 5 here and you wanted to just see how they grew. and trim them back a little bit later, that would be perfectly fine. Right here I've got 4 strong ones and I've got 3 little ones down here at the base. We'll trim them on out. And so we're left with 4 really strong looking leaders to me. So it just depends on how we want this to grow. Obviously I don't want to keep 4. The way this is worked out, this nice side branch and a side branch right here, a back and a front. I think what's going to work best for our location is to keep the ones away from the back and have it spread more side to side and more into the front, because we don't want to put too many branches back toward the house direction. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove this one here that's in the back, leave the 3 that are here, the one toward the front, one toward each side, so that they're nice and evenly spaced. And that's what we have. I know it looks like we kind of took a lot, and I'm going to take a little bit more off of this wooden piece. But crepe myrtles are tough plants. They really grow well. And this right here all the foliage that we cut off is going to allow the resources for the plant to push into these stems alone. So instead of having about 12 to 20 different branches going on, you've got 3 main ones that it's going to push all that energy into. And so that should increase its growth, and these will start to do really well. But yeah, we've got 3 of these branches now left. They are kind of in the position that I want them to be in. You'll see a little bit of side growth is happening on this piece right here. I'll probably need to come in and trim those off a little bit and make sure that we're not getting branches coming through the canopy across each other. And from all that, we've got quite a jar of potential crepe myrtle trees here for this Tuscarora. So we should be able to take a lot of good cuttings off of this. So that's what we're going to do next. And now is the fun part. This is where we get to actually make more plants of this Tuscarora crepe myrtle, and we do that through plant propagation. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the appropriately sized cuttings from here, we're going to trim them down a little bit, then we'll dip them into rooting hormone like this, hormone 3. You can use some other types. You really don't need a concentration quite this strong. You can go down to a lower level of the IBUA, indole butyric acid. That's a mouthful to say. And then we'll dip them into this mixture here, which is a half and half blend of sand and coir. Now, coir is made from coconut instead of peat. It's a very good substitute, so I highly recommend it. I've been using it for almost all my cuttings for the last 1.5 years or so. I do keep my hormone 3 into a different container right there so I don't contaminate the main container. I take out of it and put into here, and I just use what is in here until it's used up, and then I can clean this out and start again. Okay, so let's move this aside for a moment. We'll get to that here very soon. And we're going to take a look at our cuttings. I am purposely trying to stay in the shade so that these things do not dry out too quickly. And we're going to just take a look and try to size them up. You see, a cutting like this is a very good cutting, but I don't really want the floppy part at the very top of it right here. So I'm going to just pinch that off and trim off the lower branches. And you'll see here that there's a node right there and a node right there. I'm going to take what you call a nodal cutting on these, just like this. And that is just below the node. So the node is typically where you get the cells that form growth for the leaves or the roots. And so that's the part that we want to start developing the roots on. I'm going to leave the smaller leaves up here and pull off the extras so that we reduce the transpiration happening. You want to make sure as much moisture stays in the cutting as possible, and that's why we reduce the leaves. If they're smaller leaves, they're probably better. If you put too many on, it's going to sap resources from the rest of the cutting. And so then all we need to do is carefully dip this into your mixture. You don't want to get any on your hands if you can help it. If you do, wash them off really well. And then we're going to take this and we're going to put it into our already wet medium. I went ahead and I took care of that. And one thing I forgot to get is my little pencil that I use for a dibber here. So instead, I'm just going to stick my finger in a little bit. I'm going to shove that cutting in just like this. And then I'm going to tuck in the soil around it so it can be nice and tight. You don't want to leave air pockets around your cutting. You want to have that soil medium right up against the plant. And we'll do this for all of the cuttings we've got here. I may not use all this material because, to be honest, I don't need that many crepe myrtles going around. A few more would be nice. I don't need, I don't know, this could probably be 20 or so. But I will probably be happy if I get about 5 or 10 to root, but I think we could potentially have a lot more than that. Now this cutting here, it didn't trim off as well, so it's going to be a little bit shorter. I'm going to go under this node right there, and I'm going to take off some extra leaves. So we have a 2-leaf cutting. And crepe myrtles don't actually need the rooting hormone a lot of the time, but I like to use it to kind of increase the odds of success. And sometimes they have a much stronger root system overall that you can grow from. So I'll do the same, and you can see the process here. This is the 3rd one right now. We'll do the same thing with it, and we'll continue with all the rest of the cuttings, and we'll fit a bunch of cuttings into one little container. I could probably get 9 cuttings in here comfortably. Now the thickness of the cutting can help too. Sometimes these thicker ones here have more resources which allow you to make a much stronger cutting, but because of that I've got bigger leaves. So I'm going to take off this leaf right here and just leave a single leaf on it. You'll note that I am right below a node right here. I'm going to trim that just a little better so I'm closer to that node, and my pruners did not prune as well as I would have liked, but that did create a wounding situation. And sometimes when you do wounding on a plant, it creates an area around that cambium layer where you can actually have more cells happen, and then more roots will happen because of that. So we're going to take this one and we will go ahead and pop it in here with these others. While I was off camera, I put the dibber in here. And I always find when you're doing a container, you want to go from the farthest area and work your way back. You don't want to have to be working in the center. So just a little organizational note there. So as far as the size of the cutting, I am taking somewhere between 4 and 6 inches or so. And I'm just judging that on base to where it kind of looks like it would naturally grow well. The tighter your nodes are together, the greater the odds are for success because there's more cells in those areas. But you'll note this is a pretty thick stem off of that, so I think it will actually do quite well on this one here. So we'll go ahead and pop that in with these others. We've got some really good cutting material here, so I'm optimistic that we'll get some decent roots happening off of some of these cuttings. Anytime you do plant propagation, you're playing the odds. So you may or may not get everything that you're hoping to get. It may work great and have a lot of success, and a lot of that is not your fault at all, as much as it is the plant's tendencies. Some plants tend to root well from cuttings and some don't. So my recommendation is just experiment as much as you can and learn from each experiment. So there we have 9, and we've got another container to do another 9. So I'll go ahead and pop in my holes like I was talking about earlier so you can see that. You can see they're nice, neat, and organized in it. And we'll go through and make the rest of our cuttings. So I've got my 2 containers all fixed up here with a total of 18 cuttings in them, 9 in each container. And all I'm going to do now is just give them an extra dose of water. That way it allows whatever medium we have in there to go ahead and kind of push up against the stems a little bit better. So just in case there's any air pockets that I might have missed when I was pushing it down around the stem. So that's really all there is to it right now. It's going to probably take them 6 to 8 weeks or so to actually put on some roots. And what I look for when we do root is that there are some roots coming out the holes in these pots. So that's one way to do it. You can look back at the other video that I did a couple of years ago about doing crepe myrtle cuttings. A lot of people have watched that video, and hopefully it's helped some folks here and there. So when you do cuttings, it's really important that you don't stress out the cuttings any more than necessary. So that's why I always recommend putting them in dappled shade, where they get a little bit of light, but they're not getting the intense summer heat or spring heat from the sun. And these are actually going to go on a covered porch area where it doesn't get any shade. This side of the house gets a pretty good amount of sunlight in the afternoon, so I don't want to leave them right here. But the typical spot I would love to leave them at our past house was under a Japanese maple that had gotten pretty large. It allowed a lot of light to come through when needed, but not so much that it was detrimental to the cuttings. So look for a good site, a good spot to keep it in. Make sure you check them every day. You want to check and make sure that they are not drying out, that the medium is nice and moist, that if you do have a little spritz bottle or something and you want to bring it around and spritz the leaves, that helps as well, because it prevents the leaves from sending moisture out through transpiration. So you definitely want to be on top of things when you're doing it. That's one great thing about mist systems when you've got plant propagators who have developed those mist systems, that it kind of keeps it on autopilot for you a little bit more than just doing a few cuttings here and there like I tend to do. So one of these days I'm going to get around to a whole mist system and we'll go through that setup. I'm not sure it'll be anytime soon. I've got too many projects right here in front of me right now. But anyway, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time here on Growing the Home Garden. Thanks for watching.